Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Tia. I'm a 26-year-old lady who lives in my mom's basement, and today is going to be the December wrap-up. I apologize that my end of year 2023 videos have not come as planned. I have them all planned out and stuff, and I'm actually going to sit here and record a couple of them for you, but I did have some really stressful things happen over the holidays. Unfortunately, when you last saw me, I was recording a video in my grandparents' house. At the time, my dad was sick. He was not doing well, but he got so sick he had to go into the hospital, and unfortunately he did pass on the 27th while I was at home visiting. So when I got home, he was fine. He just had a developing cold, and it just progressed. So I'm glad that I was home to be there, but it was still a lot, and I was away for a lot longer than I wanted to be. I've been away from my home computer for about 3 weeks. I did just get back a couple of days ago, and I wanted to detox and be in my own space and have my own thoughts. So this is the first time I'm actually sitting down to actually record a video, even though I got home 4 days ago. I just really needed some time to myself because it was a really stressful situation. Of course, losing a family member is always hard. Losing your parent is even harder, but this extraneous circumstances just made it extremely difficult. But I'm home, I'm safe, I've been home, I'm gonna go back to work soon. If I make any dead dad jokes, now you know why. It's just my way of coping. He would want me to laugh. Been going through it. You can probably hear it in my voice that I'm not feeling 100% myself, but I want to be here. I want to talk about books, and we're going to do just that. In December, I read 7 books. It was about 2,100 pages and about 40 hours of audiobook. I'm honestly surprised I read as much as I did given everything that happened, and I honestly expected the audio hours to be more. I'd have to go back, but I feel like 40 hours is really not that much, even though I think I finished 4 audiobooks. The moods were between emotional, adventurous, and lighthearted, funny, and dark, which is a bit of a mix. I did have a little bit of a letdown, which I will explain. Our genres for the month were romance-centric. Are we surprised? It was romance, fantasy, and then young adult, contemporary, and then LGBTQA, literary, and historical. My average star rating was a 3.54. So we did have a 1.5 star rating this month. I was skimming a lot of it. I'm going to be really honest with you. I was skimming a lot of that last book because I wanted to just finish it and be done. There was that, and I don't think I'm going to be continuing the rest of that series, but I'll talk about that here in a second. The first book I read in December was The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This is my second Ali Hazelwood book, and I liked it less than I liked Love Theoretically, which, as we all know, changed my brain chemistry, and I do go into it into the November wrap up, which is lost footage that will go up as a surprise bonus video. I'm still editing that right now, but now the timing is, it's time for the December wrap up. The November wrap up is just going to be a bonus feature later. The Love Hypothesis was good. It just wasn't the same as Love Theoretically. And I said in my videos where I talked about Love Theoretically that I could tell that there was an improvement in the writing between the first book and the last book, because I believe The Love Hypothesis was Ali Hazelwood's first big book that made it really big. I'd have to double check, but I think that was the first big book that she had, and I can tell without a doubt that there is an improvement in the writing between The Love Hypothesis and Love Theoretically, and it's a good change, which is another reason why I rated Love Theoretically so high, even now in hindsight, is because I can see that there has been an improvement, and I liked the improvement, and to me that is valuable for me as a reader to be able to see improvement in a writer if I'm going to be having a favorite writer from now on. I'm not saying Ali Hazelwood is my favorite romance writer. She writes good feminist romances, but I can see it, and I think that that's a valuable thing to point out. The Love Hypothesis follows Ray and Kylo, Olive and Adam, because you can definitely tell that when you look at this book that it is a Raylo fanfiction that has just had the names changed, but that is fine. That is acceptable in this day and age. We love and have a healthy amount of respect for younger millennials and older Gen Z kids who grew up on fanfiction.net and AO3 who are now published authors. We're getting into the era of fanfiction writers becoming real writers, outside of what we know of Cassie Clare. I'm not complaining. It doesn't bother me that it was fanfiction. I honestly think that that's cheeky. I really have a lot of respect for fanfiction writers because I was one. So I know what that was like, and I just have so much love and respect for the creativity required to be a fan fiction writer, and to then take your fan fiction and go forward, there is kind of a false belief that fan fiction is kind of a stepping stone to becoming a real writer, because you get the practice of writing and like performing for people and getting reviews and stuff. I think that that's a good point. However, I don't necessarily agree with that, because it still takes a lot of creativity to create your own original story, whether or not it's using fan fiction universes or your own universe. So regardless, I have a personal investment in my respect and seeing my fanfiction girlies do well. But yes, the story follows Olive and Adam. Adam is a professor and Olive is a PhD student. She is like struggling with this inner identity of where she isn't sure if she wants to go to grad school for a long time, but in the story we find out that she does. We're just hearing about it in hindsight, that she was very unsure about whether or not she wanted to pursue an academic career, if she wanted to go to the graduate level, because she was not sure about the job field and everything. But she had a conversation with a random dude in a bathroom who convinced her to go to grad school, and we later find out that that was Adam. She just hadn't met him. That was like 2 years prior. So what happens is, and I think that it is kind of dumb and stupid, but it's cute. Olive has a best friend, and the best friend is dating a boy that Olive went on a date with first. So Olive's best friend, who is now dating this boy who Olive dated first, is nervous that Olive will feel weird that like she and the guy are now dating. And Olive is like, "Oh no, don't worry about it, girl. Like, I have a man. Don't you worry about it." And so she kisses a random man, and now she and Adam have to fake date. And at first I was wondering why he was going along with it, because she was like, "Oh, we can fake date for a minute." And he was like, "Oh yeah, this sounds like a great idea." And I was just listening to it going, what is in it for this man? The reason why he goes along with it made sense. He was agreeing to fake date a PhD student who was not his student, by the way, like no ethics violations here. He was willing to date a PhD student because he was such a valuable faculty member to the department that the department was freezing his funds for his research because they were nervous that he was getting like wined and dined by other departments from other colleges. So they were freezing his funding because they were afraid that he would leave, because they wanted him to do the funding with them, right? So they froze his funding, and he was like, well, if I show them that I have a girlfriend, maybe they'll see that I'm going to stay in the area, and thus they will unfreeze my funding. Which, to be fair, he was right. He was right. That it was very true. Not that I necessarily agree with that, but he was right. That's what they were doing. So they go on this like fake dating adventure where Adam basically just needs Olive to be there so that they unfreeze his funding for his academic research. And Olive just wants to prove to her friend that she's capable of having a relationship even though another didn't work out. So like, I understood the point of the story. I don't know if this is a me problem. And I know in other Ali Hazelwood books, Love Theoretically, the love interest absolutely rewired my brain chemistry, because it was a like emotionally stable man who like cared about Elsie's feelings and who like wanted to be invested in the things she was invested in. And that like just changed the game for me because the bar is underground. However, this kind of emotionally stable man in the love hypothesis just did not hit for me. I personally thought Adam was about as bland as untoasted white bread, but that's just me. I felt like he was lacking in the personality department. I wasn't quite sure what Olive was into him for, besides him being like this tall and her being this tall. Like, because that's what Ali Hazelwood writes, is the really, really tall, like men that are built like linebackers, and then the itty bitty little petite little things. Like, everybody makes fun of it and everybody memes on it, but like I'm 5'3.5", so like it's not hard to be taller than me. So I am the protagonist in an Ali Hazelwood book. I thought that it was cute. I thought that it was quirky, but what didn't quite hit for me and what I didn't quite understand is not just the fact that I thought Adam was bland, which that's okay. We can that I can excuse that. But what I didn't quite understand was the whole point of this being an experiment, because there was this underlying conversation about whether or not Olive believed in love in the first place. And that was what the love hypothesis was, is that she was fake dating somebody to determine if love actually exists, and then she actually like falls for him, and that's like the thesis, right? And so she's conducting this as if it's an experiment, but the narrative does not suggest that that's the case, because the whole point is that she's trying to prove to her best friend that it doesn't bother her that her best friend is dating somebody she went on a couple of dates with herself. So that's what doesn't make sense to me, is that the narrative is not reflective of what the like starting point of the story is supposed to be starting with. The whole like trying to figure out if love actually exists thing, that kind of gets lost. And so I think this would have been better suited if that was like done without, or if we got a little bit more of a backstory. I don't remember well if Olive had like commitment issues or something, but if she had like commitment issues, or like she was a child of divorce, as we all are, if she was like a child of divorce who was like deeply jaded about love and like wasn't sure if it actually existed because she watched her parents fall out of love, like I would have understood if that was included, but I don't remember if it was, because I read this book about a month and a half ago, so I don't quite remember if that was ever brought up. But I rated it 3.75 stars because it was still good, it was still enjoyable. I just thought that it was a bit lost and murky in the narrative. It was the main like starting point of where we were at, of like making, you know, trying to find out if love actually exists or not. I think that that got lost in the story. Otherwise, it was an inoffensive, cute little low stakes romance. The next book I read was Gravemaidens by Kelly Kuhn. I am starting this like kind of mini series where I want to read books that look appealing to me but don't have very high ratings on Goodreads for one reason or another, because I want to find the 5 stars for me. Like when I see an interesting book only have like a 3.5 or a 3.6 rating or even lower than that, I want to know why. Like I want to know why. Like I want to find the 5 stars for me. That I want to be one of those girlies where I'm like crying and throwing up over a book that everybody else thought was mid. I want that to be my main character energy in 2024. So when I picked up Gravemaidens, that's what I really wanted out of it. The cultural inspiration for this book is not very clear. I just did take a second to actually research to see whether or not Kelly Kuhn has been open about whether or not, like, what her inspiration was writing this book. The dress and the atmosphere and some of the language would insinuate that the inspiration is coming more from, like, Southeast Asia, like sort of India and Bangladesh. But then the inciting incident is the fact that the ruler is sick, and when the ruler dies, a bunch of servants and warriors and maidens get buried with him to go into the afterlife, which I am not sure if that is a cross-cultural thing that has happened in history outside of ancient Egypt, or if that's just, you know, in my mind, when I think about something like that, to me, like ancient Egypt pops up. Maybe that's a gap in my knowledge of whether or not that's a cross-cultural thing that happens in other places, but it's very unclear as to what the inspiration is for this book. But the story follows a couple of sisters, and I would say that they're very genuine sibling relationships. The story follows an eldest daughter who is a apprentice to her father, who was like a really big healer. He was a really big deal, but then something happened. He was the healer to the king's family, but then the king's son died, so he was like sent away in shame, and thus the family is kind of like outcast at this point. In the beginning of the story, we have a situation where the ruler is sick, and so the father, who was disgraced, was actually called back to the capital to heal him because they were running out of options. They didn't know what to do. They started doing the, you know, name pulling for who's going to go with the king when he dies, because they thought he was, you know, on his way out. But the daughter of the king wanted to save him. Like, she didn't want to just go forward with him being sick. Like, she wanted to do her best to save him. So Kamani, who is the main character, petitions for her father to get sent back to the capital to tend to the king, but then her father disappears on his way there, and she has to take his place. We later find out that he was murdered on his way there. So Kamani's sister, Nanea, was chosen as one of the maidens to go with the ruler to his grave. Kamani sees this as a death sentence, because it is, and she wants to save the king and thus save her sister. But her sister Nanea believes that this is an eternal blessing, that she should be grateful, and that she will like go to the afterlife and live as a queen, which is their cultural belief. But Kamani is a bit detached from their religion, and she's like, hello, like, you're not going to go to the afterlife and live as a queen. You're going to die. So there's a bit of a battle between those who are more religious and those who aren't. I did appreciate that, and I did like that as a part of the story. I did like a lot about the book, but what ultimately made it a 3-star read for me was that the world building was a little bit confusing at times. And for me, if I cannot clearly see what's going on in the book, like world building wise, if I can't like generate that image in my brain without resorting to stereotypes or just resorting to filling in the blanks, that to me is a problem, because I should be able to see what the author is trying to say. Like, I want to see that the world that you're creating, I want to see it. So if I don't, sometimes it's just a struggle for me. So from it's like not having a clear imagery when it comes to the world building was an issue for me. The romance was a little bit unique. It was like already from the jump you were told it was an arranged pairing, and it was just not a like slow burn will they won't they between two people who are not together, but it's like they're assumed to be arranged to be married, and thus she wants to focus on saving her family and he just wants to support and love her, which I thought was really cute. But it was still like the push and pull was really weird, and I was kind of grateful that there was no love triangle involved, but just everything about it just kind of fell short and fell like in the mid category. It's not that the book was bad, it didn't do anything like glaringly offensive or wrong, or not like I disagreed with the plot, but it's just everything was just kind of mid, in my opinion. And I really hated the sister, the little sister Linnea. I fucking hated her. She was such a brat. And like I understood from like a cultural standpoint where she was saying it's an honor to be chosen as a maiden, to be chosen to be sacrificed and like go to the afterlife as a queen, and like I'm going to live the rest of my life in riches, and like our family will be beholden to glory because of me. But I understood like where that was coming from, but I still thought she was so obnoxious. She was so ungrateful to her sister who was just trying to help her, but she didn't see it as help. So like they had that push and pull with that sibling relationship, and my god, that younger sister. I'm a younger sister. I wouldn't act like that. Before I talk about this next book, I just want to issue a reminder to anybody who might be new to my channel that any authors that I know of to be problematic, I don't buy books. I use my public library religiously. I use Kindle Unlimited. I use Audible credits. I do not give authors any financial assistance because I don't want to accidentally promote or support anybody that might hold beliefs that I believe to be problematic. So any books that I choose to read for review purposes or any other purpose, I will not be discussing them unless they're like mid to critical comments, because I don't want to promote or support or anything in any sort of way. Any sort of comments I'm going to keep to myself, because I would rather be a critical voice instead of a silent voice. So if there's anything that I read that I come across and I know the author is problematic, or I find out the author is problematic, I don't want to talk about it in a positive light. I am not going to publicly share my ratings. In fact, I do not rate them on Goodreads. Like I leave them unrated and I just put my rating in the comments just so everybody knows how I feel about it. But I am only going to be discussing mid to critical comments because I feel like that is much more productive as an online reviewer than to just remain completely silent, because people are going to read books regardless. People are going to read what they want regardless. And I would rather be a voice that's critical instead of silent. I read House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Marathon. This book is so goddamn long. I wish that Sarah would hire better editors, because Jesus fucking Christ, this book was long and I skimmed a lot of it. The book is in the 3-star range for me. I'm honestly not sure if Sarah J. Marathon is just good at writing urban fantasy, because the world building was a little bit confusing to me. I felt like I needed a map, honest to God. Like I think I would have been done a lot better justice if there were graphics and maps like more in the book. You know, when you're reading a book and a newspaper article pops up and you can like read it as if you were like a character reading the newspaper article. I needed something more like that with this kind of a reading experience. I know that I would have probably gotten that maybe from like a hardcover instead of an ebook that I got from the library, but I struggled to know who the fuck these people were. There was way too many characters. Maybe I'm just getting old, but I am struggling to read books that have too many characters and too many narrative voices. It just gets really confusing. Like I forget who people are, even if I'm reading the book in just a couple of sittings or in a couple of days. I forget who people are. Like I have no attachment to any of these people minus the main characters. I feel that way about other books too. This is not the only instance where I feel like this, but the world building was confusing. There was way too many characters. The book was way too long. It was just a lot. and it was in the 3-star range for me. Honestly, I did read House of Sky and Breath this month in January. I did just finish it, and I liked it even less. So I think I'm going to cancel my House of Flame and Shadow hold at the library, but also I wanted to review it for the channel because it is going to be a new release. And as much as people don't know like what's going on politically and like don't always follow like who's problematic and what's going on, I would almost rather like have a timely mid to critical review of a new book than just not read it at all. I mean, I'm a little bit curious as to where the shit show's going, but it wasn't good. Like it was a mid fest. Like I don't know exactly what has kept me going besides the fact that I've been gaslit by this woman to just read what she writes because I like her characters. That's one thing I can say, and that's about it. So, yeah, House of Earth and Blood, Midfest. The second book was also a midfest. I'll talk about it in the January wrap up. I know there's a lot of people who are like Throne of Glass defenders and ACOTAR haters, and I'm not an ACOTAR hater. I really like ACOTAR. So that's where I fall in the category. So like I kind of want to read Throne of Glass because I think that fantasy is where Sarah Janet needs to stay. I don't think urban fantasy is quite for her, but we're talking about urban fantasy right now. This just wasn't for her. This wasn't for her, and this wasn't for me. If anybody else has an urban fantasy they'd like to recommend, that would be better. I would like that. Thank you. Next, I read A Dawn of Onyx by Kate Golden. This is the book that was on Kindle Unlimited, and then it wasn't, so I had to track it down at the library because you will not escape from me. You will never escape from me. Do you think that you were going to? No. This book is fan fiction. I don't know for what, but this book is undoubtedly fan fiction because it's the writing style. I remember this book because I know when I talked about it in my fall TBR video, I looked at her name, and her name was Arwen Valendale, and I said that was not only a queen name, but that was like the cuntiest of slay names possible, and that's true. It is the cuntiest of slay names. She is a cuntress through and through. This is about Arwen. She has healing powers. She's taken as a prisoner to the Onyx Kingdom because her brother stole some shit. And she takes his place as a prisoner, but they see her as valuable because she's a healer. So she has to navigate her way through an enemy kingdom as a prisoner, but also that's valuable. And she meets someone in the prison, and they talk about a couple of things. And you find out that the prisoner was actually the king in hiding. You have a bit of a hidden identity in the beginning. This king was just hanging out in the prison cells because he wanted to like hear some stuff, and he wanted to pose as a prisoner to get insider information from people who were like traitors to the country, which I thought was actually kind of interesting. So Arwen has like really rare healing abilities. Like she's not just a healer, like her healing abilities are unmatched and they've never seen it before. She doesn't quite know that though. Like she doesn't quite know how rare her power is. She just knows that she has it. So it was a bit of a twist on the I didn't know I had powers trope, in which she knows she has powers. She just doesn't have the bandwidth and the knowledge to know how rare her powers are because she came from, backwoods, forest type of place. So she ends up like this really valuable prisoner, and the king who she meets in the prison cell becomes like a interest, of course, and she kind of slowly turns into a very valuable person to the king because he's like seeking her out for advice, and he's like leaning on her humanity because they see him as very bloodthirsty, and they start to fall in love, and like there's a war. So like the story itself is not irredeemable, it's just the writing itself was just kind of goofy and fanficky. Like this is a really quick read. It's cute, it's full of tropes that I don't see very often, so I thought it was quite unique. I thought that, altogether it was kind of interesting. I don't think that the story is bad at all. I rated it 3.75. It could have, added a little bit more mystery. Like I could definitely tell that there could be a writer that could write this a little bit more mature, and I don't mean mature in a sex way. I mean mature in like a writing style way. Like this is definitely a story that could have been taken a step up, and I think that that's what I mean by it's fanficky, is that I feel like the writing style is down here. Next, I read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Same thing. I know that Taylor Jenkins Reid is quite problematic, and I did not buy this book at all. I've been wanting to read more books in which queer identity and queer characters are at the forefront. I do have a couple of complaints, but I do want to say that I understand to an extent what writers are trying to portray when they're trying to go for like the realism factor, and they're not trying to erase racism, homophobia, sexism. Like they don't want to write a book in which those things don't exist, because those are very real things that have affected things throughout history. And I think taking a more realistic view at them and taking a like deeper look at them and going at it more from a commentary perspective is sometimes a little bit better than trying to almost rewrite history in a way. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo is about a biracial journalist who is chosen to write the biography of a aging queen of the silver screen, Marilyn Monroe kind of woman who is a closeted bisexual, who was closeted loving a woman for her entire life, and she wants to come clean about all of this under, like, they do the article under false pretenses. She wants to write her biography, and there's a lot of undertones of discussing identity, like racial identity, queer identity, and how that has affected Evelyn's career as she grew up, because she was a Cuban woman who had to allow the industry to sexualize her, and she had to sexualize herself in order to succeed. Unfortunately, that does fall into a lot of stereotyping about Hispanic women that a lot of people don't like, and I fully understand that. Plus, it's basically whitewashing this fictional woman to be white but not, and then any scenes in which she tries to talk about her Cuban heritage are kind of lost. Like she claps back at her maid in Spanish at one point. It's just, there are a lot of yikes things that happen in this book that are reflective of a lot of things people don't like about history, about how you had to present yourself as white and as straight in order to get by in this sort of industry. And I think what this is trying to portray is that it's trying to show you that in a fictional way, to a fictional woman, that these things did happen. These are things that we may not even know about real people, about real queer people that existed, and that we won't know the truth about because the world wouldn't let us know the truth about them. So this, in a way, gives us a window into what that would have been like if Marilyn Monroe came out as a bisexual woman in her 70s. So I took a lot of what the story was presenting with a grain of salt, because it was going more for the realism factor, the factor that racism, sexism, and homophobia exist. However, I can't dismiss the fact that a lot of it did make me deeply uncomfortable, and I think that it's supposed to. For me, this book did what it was supposed to do, because the title of the book is literally focusing on the fact that Evelyn Hugo had 7 husbands, and not on the fact that Evelyn Hugo had a successful career in Hollywood for like 40 to 50 years. So that's the whole point, I guess, is that the book is supposed to make you feel uncomfortable. However, if you choose to read it, use your library. Next, I read Awakens by Elise Kova. This was unfortunately the 1.5 star of December. This book was extremely confusing to me. The world building was a little bit confusing. I got to the point where I was skimming and I was just reading the dialogue, which I know was a recent discussion and controversy on book Twitter. But I got to the point where I was just reading the dialogue. I thought that it was definitely in need of an editor. The book is not very long. That's the thing, is that the book is not long. This is one of those books that could be longer. Like, it's one of those books that you could make longer, but I was just grateful that it wasn't. It felt fast paced, but slow paced at the same time. Like, I honestly felt like nothing happened, because it's about a library apprentice who has unawakened powers, and then a prince shoves her off a roof and she catches herself and whoop, she's an airbender. It just kept throwing me off because they call airbenders windwalkers, and a windwalker to me is what I play in World of Warcraft. Like that was what kept throwing me off. But it's very Avatar The Last Airbender inspired, to say the least. It's not horrible. I don't think that, I mean, I rated it 1.5 stars. Of course I think it's horrible, but I don't think that everybody will think that it's horrible. It's actually quite well liked. I added this to my DBR, I think last year, after I saw Carrie talk about it at some point, and I trusted her opinion, and I maybe shouldn't, because now a lot of books that she has reviewed and liked, I have not. Maybe I just like watching her and I just don't like her recommendations. But anyway, I don't know, this world building was just extremely confusing to me. I didn't really understand what was happening. A lot of it was basically positioned on the character's indecision. I also thought it's kind of goofy and dumb, but this was one of those types of books where you have like a main character who's named something really unique and fantastical, and then you have characters named Craig and Paul. This was one of those instances where it just kind of took me out. Main character's name is Vala, and the prince's name is like Eric with an A, or Eris with an A, and then there's a Paul and there's a Craig. It was just weird. It's weird to me. Like, either give them all normal names or all fantastical names. Otherwise, I'm just thinking that you put a degular name in that book, and then you thought, I'm going to go back and I'm going to replace all the Craigs with like a different name later, and you just forgot. Like, that to me is what it looked like. To some people, you might like it because it is elemental magic based, and I know a lot of people like elemental magic systems, but to me, it just didn't hit. A library apprentice that's the first windwalker in 100 years, and I felt nothing for her and her will they won't they romance with this weird prince who pushed her off a roof and nearly tried to kill her. So then again, so many novels have that he tried to kill me part in there, so really I don't know why that's a complaint to me when that's like a normal thing in an enemies to lovers. Lastly, I read Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I rated this 4.5 stars. I really liked this one. It was my first Emily Henry book, and it's about two people in the publishing industry, of one that's a book agent and the other that's a book editor, and they keep passing these books back and forth because they're trying to talk about this one book that the agent thinks is really good, but the editor hates it. So then they just go, oh yeah, I'm going to start sending you the most ridiculous things possible. And it just becomes like a meme where they just keep trading bad books back and forth, talking about this book and other books, and they grow really close. And there's an older sister mentality with the main character where she believes that she needs to just like sell as many books as possible because she's trying to care for her younger sister, because their mom died when she was really young, so she cares about her younger sister's happiness, and her younger sister has like 2 kids and 1 on the way. And so they go on vacation, and it's a very typical like city people fish out of water situation where they have this like to-do list of stuff they want to do on their vacation while her sister is pregnant. They're like, we're going to save a small business, and we're going to go on a date, and we're going to go swing dancing, we're going to go skinny dipping. Like, they have this like to-do list. It almost feels like a bucket list, and I almost expected there to be like a surprise, the sister is dying. That didn't happen. I was pleasantly surprised. It was just 2 sisters going on a road trip to a small town, and they're usually New York City people, and they're having fun in this small town. Meanwhile, the older sister is like having this flirtationship with a rival in her industry, like not rival in job. And I just thought that it was really fun. I really liked Nora as a character. Charlie was okay. I kind of wish he had a separate voice actor, but that's been a gripe of mine lately, where I think that audiobooks should have more than one narrator, but that's just me. But I really liked it. I had a lot of fun with it. I'm not sure or planning to pick up any other Emily Henry books right now, but this was a good one. I liked this one. This one can stay. So yes, those are the 7 books that I read in December. I've already read 2 books in January, so we're already off to a good start, but I'm also going for the escapism for obvious reasons. More than anything, I'm just ready to get back to what my normal is, which is creating content for you guys, starting to stream on Twitch again, and really just having a good time, because I need to get my life together. That was actually one of the things I promised Dad, not to bring him up, but that was actually one of the things that I told Dad that I would do, is get my shit together and get my life together, which, yeah, he's right. I'm just excited to be here. I'm excited to wake up every day. I'm excited to read books. This is what I like doing every day, and I might not be the most consistent content creator that you might follow, if you follow me at all. I like being here, and I like spending time with you guys. I like talking to my computer and hanging out with my cats. That's just what I like to do. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you got to the end of this video, sorry the tone is a little bit sad. I'm going to try to get a little bit happier in the next couple of recordings. But if you'd like to find me anywhere else, you can find me on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Remember to drink water and be nice to each other and exude kindness and empathy with everything that you do. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.